And this week, we're going to be talking about the commandments as well, but we're going to look at specifically what is said about the commandments in the New Testament very briefly. And then we're also going to look at especially Deuteronomy chapter 28 and what is mentioned there about these commandments. All right, so let's get on with it. So in the New Testament, in 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, it says, "For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous." So this is how we love God, simply put. You know, if you show that you love the Most High, this is how you show it, by keeping his commandments. And his commandments are not grievous. It's not a burden on us. There are two scriptures that I'm not going to go fully in detail that are here. And the first one is from the book of Mark. And this is when a rich young ruler comes and asks, "Good master," in verse 17, "what shall I do that I may inherit eternal life?" And Isaiah said unto him, "Why do you call me good? There is none good but one, that is the Most High." Then Isaiah tells him, "You know the commandments." And he goes on to spell them out. Why is Isaiah telling him about the commandments and this guy asked about eternal life? This guy asked, "How do I inherit eternal life?" Isaiah is telling him, "Keep the commandments." On the right side, another person, a lawyer, stood up and asked Isaiah, "What shall I do?" Same question, to inherit eternal life. What shall I do? Both of them are asking, what shall I do? And both of them, he refers them to the law or the commandments. He says, what is written in the law? How do you read it? Now, there are those who might watch this discussion and say, so are you saying that salvation comes through the commandments, not by believing? No, I'm saying that in order for you to follow the commandments, you obviously have to believe first in the one who's issued those commandments. So I'm not saying anything different from what you believe. Yes, you have to believe, but you have to have the actions. Faith without actions is dead. So let's not, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you don't have to believe in the Most High or in Messiah in order to get salvation. That's not what I'm talking about. You do have to believe, because why would you be following the commandments if you don't believe in the Most High? It wouldn't make sense. But this is just a slide to explain that even in the New Testament, Isaiah himself, Jesus, those who refer to him that way, or Yesu, points us to the commandments. All right. Please make notes for those on the discussion. Please make notes as we go along. I really want to hear a lot from you today on this topic. All right, let's look at now Deuteronomy chapter 28. So from verse 1 to 15 or 14, we get the blessings. And I've highlighted the blessings with some numbers. So you see the numbers in green there, number 1 through 12. Those are the blessings. I'm not going to read each and every verse, but I'll just highlight what I've marked with bullet points there. So in verse 1, it shall come to pass, if you hearken diligently unto the voice of Zambi, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that Zambi will set you high above all nations of the earth. That is the promise. And what are the blessings that follow? Let's kick it off from verse 3. We'll be blessed in the city or in the field. That means up country or in the urban centers. The fruit of your body, of your land, and your cattle will also be blessed. So your productivity, whether for you, your land, or your assets, your basket and your store. That means you will have enough to feed yourself, and you'll have even more, a surplus to keep in your stores. You'll be blessed coming in and going out. I'm not quite sure what this means, but I believe it has something to do with you coming into the presence of the Lord and you going out from the presence of the Lord or the Most High. And I took that from how Moses would come into the tent of meeting with the Most High and when he would come out. So if you're blessed coming in, it means you're blessed approaching the Most High because you're keeping his commandments. He's glad to see you. He's glad to hear from you. And when you leave his presence, he blesses you, all your supplications, all your requests. Your enemies will be smitten. They'll come against you one way and chased 7 ways. You'll have savings, you'll have a surplus. The work of your hands will be blessed. I'm on point number 7 here, which is verse 8 here. So whatever you put your hand to will be blessed. And you'll even have savings and a surplus. That's why your storehouses will be blessed. Then we go on and we see that you will be a holy people. Solely, you will be a holy people. He set us apart because of keeping his commandments. Globally, we'll be recognized. I'm on bullet point number 10 now. I'm sorry, number 9. Will be recognized, and all people of the earth shall see that's number 9, that you're called by the name of the Most High, and they shall be afraid of thee. Okay, so globally will be recognized and even revered or feared. So we would be in a position of power if we kept the commandments. Point number 11, we would have abundance. We would have abundance in people, in productivity. Point number 12, we would have wealth. We would be blessed in our work, would be the global lenders, not the borrowers. All we gotta do is keep the commandments, and we should not deviate from them. That's what is in purple over there in verse 14. You shall not go aside from any of the words which I command you this day. So these were the blessings. This is what life is supposed to be like. Now, many of us know the story of how this went. Let's see how this went. Okay, I start out here. I start out here. Some of you might know this. This is a group of musicians and artists. And in the 80s, I think it was 83 or 84, there was a major drought and famine, especially in Africa, on the Promised Land. And these artists got together and they sang a very popular song, We Are the World. Okay, there was drought. Why was there drought in Africa? We're going to see that shortly. Some of you may also have seen this image of a little girl with a vulture behind her. This was happening in Africa. It was taken in Africa. Very, very sad picture. We can get into the details of what happened later on. But this is in the Promised Land. This is amongst our people, chosen ones. Why did this happen? Why do musicians have to get together and raise funds globally in Africa? And now it's happening again. The famine that we're having right now is actually worse than that one of the 80s. The reason is because we did not keep the commandments, and we will see that shortly. So we carry on from verse 31. Okay, verse 31 talks about pretty much colonization. And in verse 32, it says, talks about slavery. Our sons and daughters shall be given unto another people, and there shall be no might in our hand. We'll have no power. The fruit of our land and all our labors shall a nation which we have known. They shall eat that fruit. Okay, we will even get mad and frustrated, and we'll be smitten with diseases from the sole of our feet to the top of our head. Okay, the Most High will bring unto us a nation which neither our fathers knew. Okay, and what will that nation do? We shall serve, and then we shall serve other gods, gods of wood and stone, and will become an astonishment or a proverb beyond and a byword among all nations. When some of you don't know this, especially those in the diaspora, but you may have had people say African time. That means, late, you're going to be 30. Or even in Africa, sometimes somebody might tell you, don't be an African. And what they're saying is, the word African is synonymous with being late or doing things in a backward manner, in a non-civilized manner. So the word Africa has become a byword or proverb. That's exactly what that means there. Then it says, you shall carry much seed out into the field and shall gather little, for the locust shall consume it. You shall plant vineyards, but the worms shall eat it. You'll have olive trees throughout all your coasts, those in East, West, and even Northern Africa. But what will happen? The olive shall cast his fruit. So if all these things are happening to our land and the trees and the vineyards and the olive trees, that's where the hunger will come from. That's where the drought will come from. We shall beget sons and daughters, but will not enjoy them. Why? Because they went into captivity. We're going to see that. All our trees and the fruit of our land, the locust will consume. Not only are we having drought, but even locusts have been sent, worms have been sent by the Most High. Then the stranger that is within us in our land shall get above us, very high, and we shall come very down, very low. So we're not in a position of power. But the stranger comes, the colonizer comes, and is the one who is in a position of power because we don't keep the commandments. That stranger, that foreigner, will lend to us. We shall not lend to him. That stranger will be the head, and we shall be the tail. I'm sure you all know about the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. You all know about the countries they call the G7, the Great Seven, or the G20. I think just this morning I saw in the news that now they're welcoming Africa into the group of the Great 20. That group of 20 is 20 countries, but why are they bringing in a whole continent? It's not really equal. They should be bringing in other countries, not just a whole continent. But it's because we were the tail. We were seen as the tail. And all that happened because, as verse 45 says, because we hearkened not to keep his commandments. Now, verse 46, this is a very important one. All these curses shall be upon for us a sign and for a wonder upon our seed forever. If you're going somewhere on the road or you're traveling through an airport, you pay attention to the signs because that helps you get to your destination. You don't want to get lost. So these curses have been our signs that have been telling us our destination, but we've been ignoring these signs. We've not been understanding them. Now that we get to understand them, we get to obey the signs. If the signs are saying, this is happening to you because you're not keeping the commandments, then you just have to obey the sign and keep the commandments. And these signs will keep on being available for us forever. Every time we see drought, every time we see dominance by foreigners, all these curses we're talking about, that is a sign that we're not keeping the commandments. And the sign is to tell us we should be serving the Most High with joy. Okay? These curses are a sign. This is a map of all the countries that came and colonized Africa after the scramble for Africa in 1884. On the left here, you see Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Belgium, and Spain. So all the pink areas like Nigeria, let me start here, Spanish Sahara, I think that is Mauritania today. That's the name of the country. And you go here to Egypt, Sudan, Uganda, East Africa. This is today called Puntland, but it's part of Somaliland. Rhodesia, this is Zimbabwe and Zambia, you know, where our brother Patrick comes from, in Zambia. South Africa, all this were British colonies, part of their empire of 34 countries or territories across the earth. The French, very active recently. Okay, this is French West Africa in red, Algeria. French West Africa is all those little countries where there's a lot of activity happening. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and so on. French Equatorial Guinea, there it goes. So what are the French Europeans doing in Africa? What are the British doing in Africa? They came to punish us. They came to take our land, to harvest our olives, to harvest everything we were planting and growing, take our land, take our people, to colonize us because we did not keep the commandments. Germany, Namibia, Tanzania, Cameroon, Togo, Italy, Libya tried to do that in Ethiopia, but the Ethiopians resisted them. Ethiopia was independent, it was not colonized. Italians were here in Somaliland as well, and in Eritrea. Okay, Portugal, Angola. That is why our brothers in Angola speak Portuguese. Brother Tusamba, Brother Benica, and others that we know from that land. The videos we were watching yesterday of the events in Angola, last night, the wonderful worship, Sister Laura, I was watching that. Mama Royal, I saw that, your comments as well. Like you, I was like wondering, why are they speaking in Portuguese? It's because of the colonialist was from Portugal. So they still speak in those languages, just like I speak in English, you know? And a lot of these languages have become the national languages. And you have Belgium. This is Democratic Republic of Congo, the former Zaire. In the Bible, it's called Zaire without the E at the end. I think it appears once in the scriptures. This land in itself can produce enough food for the entire continent and a surplus. Belgian Congo, where you have Democratic Republic of Congo, the eastern part of it, experts have estimated that the minerals in that land are about $24 trillion worth. The US economy was about $21 trillion worth in 2019, if I'm not incorrect. That land alone, you know, we lost and we keep losing all those minerals because of our disobedience. And we have Spain, little territory there. I don't know if there's another one. But anyway, this is just a map to show you the actual colonization that is in the scriptures. Let's get back to the scriptures and look at second to last slide. So verse 48 says, we'll serve our enemies, those ones we just looked at. We'll serve them in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. So we're going to have poverty. For the most time, when you look at traditional media, you see images of Africa, or you've seen images of Africa or Africans or Black people around the globe, and they're in poverty. And they'll put a yoke of iron upon your neck. Now, this is not a badge of honor, but we will see some images of people with yokes of iron upon their necks. The only people who have suffered that throughout history are what we call Black people, whether in Africa or outside Africa, as part of slavery. The Most High will bring a nation against us from far, a nation whose tongue you shall not understand. Now, we just looked at a map where there were several tongues that came from abroad, the Portuguese, the British, the English, and so on. That's exactly what that verse is talking about. And that foreigner shall eat the fruit of our cattle and the fruit of our land, and they shall besiege all our gates, just like they besieged Jerusalem. They came and took over all our countries. Now we're just reading about it in the history books. All African countries were mostly getting independence between 1960 and 1994. And South Africa, I think that was the last one, if I'm not mistaken, to get independence. So there are people of a fierce countenance, right? They came with a gun. We were trying to fight them with arrows. They dominated us. The Portuguese did that from the 1400s, late 1400s. 51, here, they planned our crops. 53, oh my, this one just led me to tears when I read it. Pretty much, we were suffering so much, our ancestors suffered so much, we got to a point of cannibalism. And that is highlighted from verse 53 to 57, where a parent will eat their child because of all the suffering. You have nothing to eat. You get to a point where you eat your own. I don't even want to get into the details of it, but brothers and sisters, this is what happens when you disobey the Most High, when you fail to do and to observe all the words of this law. Verse 59, now we're in a territory of genetic plagues that last for long periods and go through generations. It says, and the Most High will make thy plagues wonderful. I think that's a translation. It's maybe horrendous. And all the plagues of thy seed. Singular. We're not talking about the seed of plants. We're talking about your seed, your posterity. Even great plagues and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses and of long continuance. It's not something that you just get and then goes away like a cold. No, it stays on and on. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which you are afraid of, and they shall cleave unto you, and also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law. Sorry. So our ancestors thought they had seen everything, and they knew of every plague possible. But then, lo and behold, there were things, there were diseases, there were plagues that were not even written or known to them that we would experience as their posterity. I can think of some. I can think of Ebola, HIV, AIDS, and so on and so forth. And most times, those plagues have happened and affected mostly our people in Africa as well as outside Africa. On the left here, this is in Namibia. These were images. This is what the Germans were doing. You have one of them there. Notice those chains are on their necks, those yokes, just like it was said in the scriptures. Zanzibar, this is off the coast of East Africa. It's actually part of Tanzania. It's an island. They have a memorial there of what happened in the East African slave trade. Again, chains around their necks. So this is happening on the west coast of Africa. This is happening on the east coast of Africa. It's not a badge of honor. It's a badge of shame for us because we didn't keep the commandments. But thanks to Tanzania, this is now coming to an end. Right? I go keep going. Let's look at the last verses here. And you shall be left few in number. So we're going to have a decrease in population because you would not obey the voice of the Most High. And you shall be plucked from the land whether you go to possess. So we'll be removed from the promised land. Now, if you ever doubted that you're the Bantu, that you're Isolele, you're the children of Israel, just look at history. If somebody claims that they are the Israelites, the children of Jacob, look at them and look at their history and see if these things happened to them. Were they removed from the promised land? Were they in the promised land? Were they scattered globally where they would end up worshiping gods of wood and stone, which is here? Zambi shall scatter you among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there you shall serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, gods of wood and stone. When I hear wood and stone, I think crosses, and I think of stones like the Kabbalah stone that is worshipped or revered in Islam. Crosses in Christianity, you see them everywhere, whether they're made of wood or whether they're made of stone or metal. And among these nations where you'll be taken, all nations, whether you're in the US, Brazil, India, wherever we were taken, we will find no ease. So we'll have no peace. We have no rest. The soul, you shall find no ease, neither shall the sole of your foot have rest. That Zambi shall give you a trembling heart. We live in fear and failing eyes. We are like feeling hopeless and sorrow. We are depressed. Okay? And your life shall hang in doubt before thee, and you shall fear day and night, and I shall have no assurance of your life. So we are fearful, and there's a constant threat on our life and livelihood. The world has now seen the horrors of policing in the US. In 2020, we saw the stories of George Floyd. In other years, we've seen other people in the US, Breonna Taylor, and I could go on and naming so many other names. This is happening to us, brothers and sisters. It doesn't happen to others, but just us. This is part of the curses. And then we'll be waking up in the morning and we're saying, I wish it was in the evening, or I wish it was in the morning, because we have fear in our hearts and we are seeing all these horrendous things happening. Let me wrap it up or finalize with this one in verse 68. And Zambi shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by way whereof I spake unto thee. You shall see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, basically slaves. Now, let me finish up with this last image here. This is a map, of course, of Africa. And I'll walk you through the red lines. Africa is divided into half here. There's a blue part on the west and then a reddish part on the east. So this is slave trade. These blue and red arrows represent slave trade. Here in red, we're being invaded into all these regions in red, okay? From Sudan, the north here, and even parts of Ethiopia, actually, not Sudan, but Ethiopia, all the way down to like Mozambique and even parts of South Africa or Malawi down there. We were being invaded and our people were being taken through these slave ports, the little circles that you see here. So like Sofala, Mozambique, Kilwa, Mombasa in Kenya, Malindi, Mogadishu in Somalia. In total, I counted about 21 ports, those little circles. Zanzibar, where I showed you some images from, is here. And these are the ports. These were slave ports. They were markets. It's like the way you take your produce to a marketplace. They would invade the interior of the continent, abduct people, chain them, and then ship them off. This is to India. This is to Arabia. I don't like that word, Middle East. It just identified who came up with it. East of the people somewhere here. Okay, so they would take us to Europe, to North Africa, to Arabia, to India. That's why we have like the CDs in India, and they trace their ancestry to East Africa. And this went on between the 7th and the 19th century. 12 centuries, approximately 1,000 to 1,200 years. That has been going on for much longer. I read some estimates. I'm not sure of the accuracy, but they estimated that about 40 to 50,000 people would be shipped off from East Africa or eastern half of Africa every year to slavery. Then you have the transatlantic slave trade, the Western slave trade. They got people from these sections in blue and shipped them off to Brazil and other places. As a matter of fact, the community that I come from, the Kamba, we have people, Kamba-speaking people, down in Uruguay, down here in South America. Last figures I saw say they're estimated to be about 2,500 of them left. You know, if any of them hear me at some point online or something, or watch this, please get in touch. Those people, the Kamba people, as well as the Portuguese-speaking people in South America, or even those who trace their ancestry to West Africa. Please connect with us. We need you guys to come back home. We'll be glad to have you back home. So this is how in 1619 and the times when they started the slave trade, they shipped people from Angola into the US. That's how most of our ancestors were shipped here. All right. I think that will be it. I'm sure you all have a lot of comments. I will stop right now and we can start having a discussion. I'd like to know your thoughts. And welcome everybody who joined while I was going on. Good to have you all. I think that's Sister Patrina in Belgium. Yeah, good to see you, sister. How you doing?
I'm good. Seeing you, everyone.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so good to have you, Sister Patrina. I see you said you might not be sticking in for long. Okay, so let me know if you have any comments or questions. Just raise your hand or type in a Q or a C in the chat. I'm sure there's a lot of thought, a lot of emotion, a lot of knowledge that I had to spew out in 25 or 30 minutes.
Yes, yeah, me, Elder Chikamo. The first thing that comes to mind is what you mentioned about Saudi Arabia. The crazy part about that is we can use the example of the young lady the other day who got detained over there from Texas, and what the general consensus was with the bloggers, if you want to call them that, was that nation over there lives in righteousness, and they can and they were using that as a way to talk about how we have people have fallen below the standard of righteousness. So like they were just basically talking about how she went over there. It's against the law to yell at a man as a woman in Saudi Arabia. So she did that, and that's why she was confined to a hotel room, right? She didn't get locked up like everybody was saying. She was confined to a hotel room. So it's just like I see what you mean when you say these things happen because we're not following the commandments and stuff like that. I mean, even though we know the Islamic nation is actually a made-up nation by the Catholics, that's pretty interesting in itself. Um, they they've made up their own commandments, and it's working for them. You see what I'm saying? So so I mean, the scriptures say there's a rain fall on the just and the unjust. So it's like even if you I don't okay, this is me saying this. So you could even say that maybe they do have a standard of righteousness in the sight of the Most High. You know, maybe I don't know. Yes, it's blood money, but how are they so prosperous and we can't figure that out from our vantage point? So I just want to, I would like to leave it there for anybody, autonomous.
Yeah, good points, brother Makudi. Good points, giving us an example of, that mistreatment somebody has been given in Saudi Arabia, and also mentioning how is it that they're quite prosperous. I'd like to hear what some people think about that. And also, when you mentioned about the rain, there was a verse in here, and I'm trying to look for it, where Nzambi actually said that he would cause the rain to be like dust on our land, So it's like you get snow and you cannot do much with that kind of precipitation, you know. And I've seen this statistic. It says something like about 60% of the globe's arable land where you can grow crops is in Africa. So how can you have all the land that should be growing the food for the world, but you're starving, you have famines, you have drought, Um, I don't know how to explain it other than some of it is coming from, what is written in the scriptures due to our disobedience. Welcome, Nick. Good to see you. Mama Royal daughter, go ahead.
He asked a question, how come they're rich and they continue to be rich? There is one thing that we could never, ever judge anybody, put anybody up against us, because we're in a totally different place. What happened to us was spiritual. Nobody else can say that. And so we keep comparing ourselves to the other people when that can never happen. We're not on equal playing field, you know? And Jeremiah, I think it's Jeremiah 30. Yeah, Tatan Zambi says that that about the time of Jacob's trouble. And he says, and I will break the yoke from your neck and the bonds from your hands. So just that, compare, and it correlates with what you were saying with the plagues, the curses in Deuteronomy 28. Just that, You can never hold us up against anybody and compare us to anybody because of what happened to us and what is still happening. You know, we're seeing the beginning of our restoration. I know people are exhausted. You know what I'm saying? But that's why Tata Zambi said, just hold on, just stand still, you know. So we could never compare ourselves to anybody else because what happened to us didn't happen to anybody else. And what happened to us was spiritual. We could not take ourselves out of it. Um, and so they are of this world. You know, in the Bible speaks about the false prophet, and that's who the false prophet is, because you know, he's the false prophet. And so they are of this world, and so that's why they're rich. Satan came to Isaiah and offered him the whole world because he could offer him the whole world because he knew that this world was going his way. It was given to him because it's coming to an because of the ending. So he could offer him, you know, the world because this is their world. We're still in their world, and we know the end, what's going to happen to their world. You know, in Isaiah 29:16, Tatanzambi said he turned the world upside down. And we've seen that. You know, he says, I turned the world upside down. And literally, you know, scientists show that the world keeps turning, that true north keeps turning, and the world is literally turning back upside down. If you want to check it out, check the science of that. Tatanzambi did say he turned the world upside down. And so he says, I saw slaves walk, I saw slaves riding horses and kings walking in Ecclesiastes. So we are in the upside down world still. So they you know, they're at play. This is their thing. They're at play, and we see the beginnings of the end for them, because in order for us to be restored, the other one has to come down. One has to come down for the other to go up. So Tatanzambi has to get rid of them and clean up the world in order for our restoration to happen. Ingita.
Ingita.
Thank you, Mama, daughter. Thank you. Thank you. Sister Terry Ann, go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
Why the Arabs are so rich? We forget sometimes I think we forget the concept of blessing. When the Most High gave the prophecy to Abraham that he would have a son of promise, what did Abraham say? Oh, let Ishmael live before you. And the Lord pronounced, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, pronounced a blessing on Ishmael, telling him that he would be a mighty warrior. And Genesis 17, beginning at 19, verse 20. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac. Now we know from our brother Esau's children married the children of Ishmael. When Esau found out that Jacob got the blessing from Isaac, he cried before Isaac, what did Isaac do? Then Isaac said his father and said to him, behold, your dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven above, and by your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. And it shall come to pass when you become restless that you shall break his yoke from your neck. Why the Arabs are so rich? Because they've done what we failed to do. They might fight among each other, but they will never let a foreigner come in and hurt their brothers. And that's what we've failed to do. That's why they're prosperous today. And until we learn that lesson from Brother Esau, we're gonna always be in trouble. Is it Engeta? I'm not
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you so much, Sister Terry-Ann. I love that response. I think you hit all the good points that we're looking for in an answer. That explains it very well. And by the way, for those of you who are not aware, most of Northern Africa is actually occupied by Arabs. And when I say Northern Africa, just think the Sahara Desert and all the countries from like Egypt all the way to Mauritania on the west coast of Africa. And these are the these are the Arabs, sorry. These are the Arabs who came about as a result of intermarriage between Esau's descendants, the Edomites, or the Ishmaelites, because Ishmael was a black person. But as a result of intermarriage with the Caucasians, they produced the Arabs. Okay, and they occupy most of Northern Africa and so-called Middle East. That word is just the worst word somebody could ever come up with. Middle East of what? Anyway, let me not digress. Thank you so much, Terry-Ann, Sister Terry-Ann. That was very good. Mama Margaret, you posted something about the book of Haggai. Care to comment about that?
I think you spoke about the Jew and the blasting of the Jew and male Jew. That is the reason why, because I think in verse 17 said, I smote you with blasting and with mildew and with hail in all labor of your hands. Yet you turned not to me, said Satan Zambi. Consider now from the day upward, from the 4 and 20th day of 9th month, even from the day that the foundation of Satan Zambi's temple was laid, consider it. Yeah, you're speaking about the mildew because you see, like you plant so much, you don't reap so much. You plant so much vineyard, they don't get so many wine. You might get like 10 bottles or from a whole vineyard. So that's why I put Haggai there, because it says a little about that. The mildew and the blast that came upon the earth, instead of rain, this is what you get for it. The field couldn't grow. The field couldn't prosper. Nothing a plant couldn't prosper from it. Engeta.
Thank you so much, Asante Sana. Thank you so much for the insight. Welcome, Nick. I don't know if I'd said welcome. Nick was asking, did one of the verses you read say that in the lands they were taken into, they will not have peace or they will not be settled? Yes, the verse that I was referencing, actually it's a few verses, from verse 65, it reads, and among these nations, actually let me start from verse 64. And the Most High shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other. So we're being scattered. And there you shall serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, even wood and stone. Then verse 65 says, and among these nations shall you find no ease, neither shall the sole of your foot have rest. But Nzambi shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind, and your life shall hang in doubt before thee, and you shall fear day and night, and you shall have no assurance of your life. In the morning you shall say, oh, I wish it was in the evening. And at evening you shall say, I wish it was morning. For the fear of your heart, wherewith shall you fear? And for the sight of your eyes, you shall see that which you shall see. So those are the verses that were saying that. So our state of mind is one that is not at ease, as long as we're not in obedience with the commandments in this foreign lands. And I have read story upon story, whether it's here in the US, I have even experienced it myself. 20 years ago or thereabout, more than 20 years ago. This was in the late 90s. I was traveling through Europe. This was before September 11th. But I would just get stopped at the airports and checked. You know, one time I was traveling through Germany and I'm at the train station and two policemen with a dog, they ran after me, the friend I was with from Uganda, and they stop us in the subway station and they ask us for paperwork and visas and tickets and all that. And I had to ask myself, why did you not stop everybody else? You could see all these people just came from the airport. This is the first stop after the airport on the train. Why did you choose to stop us? Why did you choose to harass us? Now I get it. Because we were not going to have any ease wherever we go. This is it. I mean, you have to personalize these things, guys. You know, today, for those of us who live in the US, and maybe this is happening also in some other places, if you have a child, when they start getting to about teenage years, 16 years old, and they're about to start driving, you even start talking to them about how to interact with the police. You know, and I'd like for those of us in the US to shed some more light to those who are not about what we're talking about. You know, you gotta know when the policeman stops you or policewoman stops you, how to behave, how not to behave, because your life is on the line. That's the concern about the life. All right, I see a few more hands up. Vincent, and then we'll go to Naibu, and then back to Mama Royal daughter.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Happy Sabbath. I'll just make a few comments. First, on the issue of the targets around the Arabs. Let me just make two comments. History gives us different aspects in this manner. And we tend to forget the impact of what we saw on the screen in terms of the colonization. One of the scriptures that was read in Deuteronomy, I think it was around verse 40, 42, somewhere there, okay? When it talks about you shall have sons and they shall be taken and your eyes shall fail and shall look. So essentially what happens during colonialism, when these guys started coming and taking people, they took the young, so the young and the productive were taken away. Actually, more or less like the best of the land was taken away into captivity and into slavery. What we have, the people that were left were the cowards and the very weak that could not go anywhere, that could not survive the journey. The pride of the land was taken. That's what they were targeting. The ones that were left were the ones who went and hid. So you actually have a scenario whereby a loss of the knowledge, a loss of the cultural heritage was lost because there was nothing, there was no one to pass on. When you left with old men and maybe small children now, their mothers and everybody's taken. There is nobody to pass on the tales and everything to the young children, assuming that you have come and raid a village and you kill all the weak ones, all the strong ones. So what you're left with, very young children and very old people. Those old people now are the ones who will raise up these young ones and try to educate them, but you have a generational gap. And that's why when you read in history, you had a lot of kingdoms before. You had kingdoms like the Mende kingdom like Mansa Musa, very wealthy people mentioned during the times of the Romans and everything else. The very wealthy, well-established kingdoms that were up there among the very best. And we were working with gold and mining and working metal like bronze and everything in Africa. But when you raid and you disperse everyone, and you're left now with people who cannot do these things. It's like now today, if I came to in Europe and I shut down all the electrical power, and then I tell the people to cook, I can tell you many of them will starve because they don't know how to light firewood, So you're taking like all the advanced people out and you wipe them out. So when you look at in those cases, it has taken a lot of time just to recover. Now, the same has not happened for some of these people that we can say now they are very wealthy, because the like the Arabs that you're saying, because now they had from the 7th century, they have been there just having their own internal small fightings and going out to raid. So they have had time to transfer the knowledge to descendant upon descendant upon descendant. And that for us was because we came under that specific as that said, we will lose our children. It's not just the children going, it's the knowledge going, you know? If you go to the beginning of the scriptures, when he talks about retaining the blessing, I think let me just, that one was at the very beginning. And I'll just highlight that because I think for me it was the most important. See in verse 1, if thou shalt hearken, you see the word hearken. I don't know, Douglas, if you could put that up. Okay, it says, if you shall hearken. To hearken, you see that and it shall come to pass if they will hearken diligently. To hearken is to listen. So it's not just about, they already had the laws, they were given the laws, okay? But it means that they needed to pay attention when God spoke. He will hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord, which means God would still come and talk to them, but they stopped listening. It's not just about having that they had the laws, but it meant that God also sent people to tell them that this is do this and this, avoid this, stop this, but they did not. So when we find ourselves failing in that aspect, we get into trouble. If you go into the book of Jeremiah, it talks about our leaders failing. When the leaders and the prophets stop following the word of God and we begin having our own teaching and preachings of what we want to hear, we end up now coming to this scenario whereby we fail to listen to what God says. The blessings come if we listen, the curses come when we don't listen. But God would still send prophets even in those days, even before our colonialists came. If you listen to the stories scattered all over, we have prophets in Kenya and prophetesses like who would talk about the iron snake that would come, who would talk about the white man that looks like a ghost. Recorded right now, recorded. These are guys who are describing these things in the 1700, 1800 in places like Kenya among different communities, Bantu communities. So it was an issue of listening when God speaks and doing, being reminded. So I think in terms of that aspect, we just need to look at it that and remember for us, even for those who are in Africa, it's now a rebuilding project. And that is what we thank the Most High for, that is what he's doing. Thank you.
Hey, Elder Vincent, before you go on, please explain what the iron snake was.
All right, let me just give it context. Among the Kamba community, they had a prophetess they used to call Siokimau. What she did is that now what they had elders. Now this is the elders among the people. They would have women and men who are senior. And these people would be revered in the community because they'd have gifts. There are people who dream things before they come to be. So this person will dream a dream and say, I saw this. And they'd forecast, even when you're going to have famine, drought is coming, let us stop this thing evil that is beginning. Now, she prophesied that there would be an iron snake that would come and it would pass through the country and pass through the people, and the people needed to fight it. Same thing was recorded also through some communities in Rift Valley. They recorded in history that also their prophets say that there was an iron snake coming. I think it was among the Kalenjin, and they were supposed to stop and fight the iron snake not to come in because the iron snake could bring death. And the iron snake was a train. So you can imagine this person is trying to describe a train. How do you describe a train to somebody who's never seen a train? It looks like a snake because it's moving and coiling, but it's made of iron. You're familiar with iron because you work with it. So it's an iron snake. So that's how, so those are some of the examples of the things that were there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Vincent. It's always good to expound on things like that because we in the diaspora that were born and raised do not know this stuff. We were not taught this stuff in school, unlike you guys in the hinterland in Africa. Brother Naibu, go ahead. Good to see you.
Ingeta Elder. Amani. Yes, thank you for this class, because we really have to understand why did we fall. We do know, just like if you go to the commandments, it's not enough to say that's why we fall. The only commandments, the only reason why we fall was when we accept another spirit. So let me read in the book of Judith chapter 5. I'll try to read it all the way at the end, try as fast as I can, so I can see how you can see the reason how we fall, not just by commandments, but by receiving another spirit. Also, I'm going to be reading other chapters so I can back it up. But first one, it says that, then was it declared to Hophernes, the chief captain of the army of Assur, that the children of Jacob had prepared for war, and had shut up the passage over the hill country, and had fortified all the tops of the high hills, and had laid impediments in the campaign countries, wherewith he was very angry, and called all the prince of Moab, this is Morocco, and the captains of Ammon, which are Morocco and Algeria, Chaldea, and all the governors of the sea coast, the Tyrians are down, hopefully. And he said unto them, tell me now, ye sons of Canaan, who this people is, and that dwelleth in the hill country, Congo, and what are the cities that they inhabit, and what is the multitude of their army, and where is their power and strength? You see where he say, and where is their power and strength? So their power, our power is the spirit, and what king is set over them, or captain over their army, and why have they determined to come and meet me more than all the inhabitants of the west? Then they said, Akio, the captain of all the sons of Ammon, let my lord now hear a word from the mouth of thy servant, and I will declare unto thee the truth concerning these people, the Bantu, which dwell near thee, which dwell near them, inhabiteth the hill countries, Congo, and there shall no liar come out of the mouth of thy servant. These people, the Bantu, are descended of the Chaldeans. My bad about that. And they sojourn henceforth in Mesopotamia, because they will not follow the gods of their fathers, which were in the land of Chaldea. So, for they left the way of their ancestors, and they worshipped the God of heaven, the God whom they knew. So they cast them out from the face of their gods, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days. Then their God commanded them to depart from the place where they sojourned, and to go to the land of Canaan, where they dwelt and were increased with the gold and silver, with a very much cattle. But when the famine covered the land of Canaan, they went down into Egypt and sojourned there, while they were nourished and became the great multitude, so that one could not number their nation. Therefore the king of Egypt arose up against them, and dealt subtilely with them, and brought them low with labor and in brick, and made them slaves. Then they cried unto their God, the Most High. He smote all the land of Egypt with incurable plagues, so the Egyptians cast them out of their sight. And their God dried the Red Sea before them, and brought them to Mount Sinai, and Kadesh Barnea, and cast forth all that dwelt in the wilderness. So they dwelt in the land of the Amorites, and they destroyed by their strength all them of Esbon, and passing over Jordan, they passed all the hills countries, and they cast forth before the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Jebusites, and the Shechemite, and all the Girgazites, and they dwelt in that country many days. And whilst they sinned not before their God, they prosper. And whilst they sin not before their God, they prosper, because the God that hateth iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles, very sore, and were led captive into land that was not theirs. And the temple of their God was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies. But now are they returned to their God, and are come up from the places where they were scattered, and have passed Jerusalem, where their sanctuary is, and are seated in the hill country, for it was desolate.
Hey, Brother
Now
Knight,
therefore,
sorry to interrupt you. Just give me the book that you're reading and the chapters and the verses. I want to post them here in the chat.
yes, Judith chapter 5.
Judith?
Judith
Okay.
chapter 5 from verse 1 to 24.
Okay.
Yes, I'm on 21 now.
Go ahead.
Now therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error against these people, and they sin against their God, let us consider that this shall be their ruin, and let us go up, and we shall overcome them. But if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my Lord now pass by, lest their Lord defend them, and their God be for them, and we become reproach before all the world. And when Achaia had finished these sayings, all the people stand around about the tent murmured, and the chief men of Holofernes, and all that dwelt by the seaside in Moab spake that he should kill him. For say they, we will not be afraid of the face of the children of Israel. For lo, it is people that have no strength or power for strong battle. Now therefore, Lord Holofernes will go up, and they shall be prey to the devoured of all thine army. So I'll read this chapter to say that they did not come and defeat us because we did not keep the commandments. It was just because if we read in the second Ezra, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'm just gonna chapter 6 verse. Let me see. Let me jump to the point for 57. Say, and now, O Lord, behold these heathen which have ever been reputed as nothing, have begun to be laws of us and to devour us. And the only way they can do that is by removing us from that, because he asked the question, where is their strength? And they say, if you cause them to sin, if they be sinning them, because the Almost High doesn't hate sin, and there is not gonna be with them. And the same thing in Psalm 83. The only way to make someone his heritage to be no more in remembrance is by removing their worship, because now we are worshiping another spirit, which they brought to us, which goes to 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Where do I want to start? Verse 4. For if there cometh preach another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if he received another spirit, so preaching another Jesus is gonna give you another spirit, which we have not received, and you're gonna give us another gospel, which we have not accepted. And this, my conclusion, will be in the second Maccabees, chapter 11, verse 24. It says that we understand other nations also that the Jews will not consent to our Father for to be brought unto the custom, tradition of the Gentiles, but had rather keep their own manner of living. So what does that mean? It means that this religion, this preaching of a gospel, is not like it just means it's a way of living. It's a culture where people must live according to how they were given, and they want us to submit to the Gentiles' way of living, and this will cause us to sin against the Most High, which is what's happening today. We are not living according to our custom. We are living according to the custom of Gentiles, which caused us to suffer and to live after their own laws. And that's all I have to say, that the only reason we suffer is because we accept another spirit to this day. And that spirit, it just means Ubuntu, the way of living, which is culture, Inget.
Thank you. Sante sana. Sante sana. I'm glad you gave us references from outside the Bible, because like the ones you talked about in Judith and Second Maccabees, because that goes to explain why the foreigners brought us their own Jesus and then tried to hide it in those books. They were hiding it by not putting it in the Bible, which most people in Christianity read. I also like the point that you brought about when you read, I think it was 2 Corinthians, that he said, we preach Jesus and don't let somebody else preach to you another Jesus. I just thought about it. If Jesus was black, so to speak, but they bring us a white Jesus, that's another Jesus. That's what Paul is talking about. That's another Jesus. Just like they brought us gods that our forefathers did not know. And those were the gods who were changing the commandments, who were saying, observe the Sabbath tomorrow, not on a Saturday. And who are saying, let's get rid of this commandment that talks about idols, so that they could make you a cross of a white Jesus. So how can we continue? How can we thrive if we continue as a people to be praying and worshiping to those gods and in those ways? Those are not our ways. And this is why I like the message that I've been hearing a lot recently, which has been run away from those churches. And that's what the awakening is about. You're leaving, you gotta run, vote with your feet, get out of there. If they cannot get rid of those crosses, those idols and whatnot, get out of there. Mama Royal daughter, I see your hand is up. Yeah, go. I think it's a new hand, right? Mama Royal daughter. Mama Royal daughter, go ahead. Time is given, and then Mama Matuzola, I see your hand also.
Thank you. A couple of things. When you spoke about the white Jesus just now, I think about the definition of the Antichrist. It says he stands in the place of Christ as if he is Christ. So, a lot of people are looking for the Antichrist, and that's the Antichrist, because he stands in the place of Christ as if he is Christ, the real Christ. And that's the definition of the Antichrist. The brother was speaking about how many people. I watched a documentary talking about how many people were really taken from the continent, and the usual figures that they give us is like 12 to 18 million. Not at all. Nigeria alone has 14 million people. Think about that. The documentary I watched said it was more like 130 to 150 million that made it alive. Because think about the whole continent, like how many people were there, like thriving kingdoms. If Nigeria alone has 14 million, the whole continent, could you imagine? And Tatan Zambi did say to Abraham, your children would be like the sands of the seas if you could count them, but they will come down few in numbers. And that's what really happened. But I wanted to stop 1 minute on that fear when you read about the fear. How many times is that fear? Because that is the biggest thing that happened to us. Fear causes a trauma and generational trauma. And see, this is why slavery was the punishment of choice for the enemy, because of the fear and the trauma associated with it. Because in order to get into the kingdom, we have to stand in faith. Fear is the opposite of faith. Fear causes trauma, and trauma attempts to rewrite your DNA. That's why even till now, the fear, people still are in fear because that has been beaten into us. You know, I was looking at a documentary once that said that your spirit cannot handle pain. And so that's why if they beat you that much that your spirit will separate from your body. And that's what, you know, a lot of mental illness, mental trauma, because they attempt to rewrite your DNA and imprint that fear so deep in you that you can't trust. And that is what happened to ancient Israel coming out of Egypt. They could not trust because that fear had been beaten into them. And this is why, you know, like the media and all of these people spend so much time, even now, perpetrating fear, pushing that fear, you know, because they know it is our faith that will hold us up. It is our faith that will take us all the way. Especially like now in this time, all we really are standing on is faith. And if you're in fear, that faith, you know, that like the scriptures say, man's heart will fail them for fear. And we see that really, really, really happening, literally happening in front of our eyes. Even young people are just dying from myocarditis, you know, heart attacks here, there, and everywhere. Look how many people died from 2020 till now. Fear, you know. So that fear, you know, it is one of the things that they did to us, that they tried to make sure that we don't come back to being who we are.
Oh, Ingeta, thank you so much, Mama Royal. That was good. And we really gotta get out of that place of fear. We really gotta get out of that place of fear. You know, the kingdom of Most High is not about words, it's about power. You know, we've not been given a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of
power, love,
right?
And
And
a
when
sound mind.
and say that again.
and
And
a
a
sound mind.
Sound mind.
Okay, and a sound mind. Yes,
Yes.
and a sound mind. Thank you all for that reminder. So we've seen in the scriptures what our forefathers did is when they messed up, when they didn't keep the commandments, they were given over to a spirit of an unsound mind. They went mad, they went crazy, they were fearful. And now, thankfully, with this awakening, we're going to come out of that by keeping and observing the commandments. Before I go to Mama Matuzola, Mama Margaret, please post the chapter or verse that you wanted to talk about in Obadiah. Then after Mama Matuzola, we can come to what you had in mind. All right, Mama Matuzola.
Okay, my apologies, family. I just wanted to comment on what Naibu was saying about Isolale with reference to, yes, Tatanzambi gave us commands that we ought to keep, but the nations were able to get over us, and you know, of course, you know, for all the things that we did. But I wanted to reference what he was saying when he was reading from the book of Judith and Ezra and Maccabees. And I agree with him because for me, it just keep coming back to in Jeremiah, I think it's Jeremiah 2:11, where Tatanzame say, does any other nation exchange its God? Isolale exchanged their gods. Isolale exchanged their God. Even though everything was happening to Isolale, but Isolale, as Nabu said, Isolale stopped worshiping the Most High and started to worship, as Elder Kennedy said, the gods of wood, stone, all these things, and it continues to happen till this day. Our people are stuck under Christianity, worshiping the gods of the nations. They worship gods that their ancestors did not know. My ancestors didn't know Jesus. And I'm not coming against anybody that call on Jesus. Okay, I am not. And I'm not saying that people cannot use a name. That's a whole nother story, a whole nother conversation for another time. But I'm saying this that has been offered in Christianity. That's what I'm speaking to. My ancestors did not know this. They did not, that wasn't what they knew, and that's who they worship. But in our captivity, this is who we have known, and this is who we have exchanged our gods to worship. And I just want to share something from 2 Kings. It is, hold on, let me find it. Yeah. It's 2 Kings. And in 2 Kings chapter 17, and starting at verse 33, it says, they were both worshiping the Lord and serving their own gods. They were worshiping them. Listen what they're saying. This is what Isolale was doing. Isolale was worshiping the Lord and serving their own gods. They followed the customs of the nations from among whom they had been deported. These nations caused us to fall, and these nations continue to cause us to fall as long as we keep holding on to their God and worshiping their God, and will not come back with our whole heart and just be finished with their God. Take your God, do whatever you want with him, but I will not bow down to him. I will not worship him. That is not the God of my ancestors, and I will not worship him. You can worship him if you want. I'm not going to come against you. But as for me and my house, we will not worship the gods of these nations. And that's just how it is for me. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, and it goes on to say, till this very day, they continue to act according to their former customs, not worshiping the Lord, nor observing the statutes and regulations, the laws and commandments that the Lord enjoined on the put on the descendants of Jacob. It's just what it is. It just don't get no more plain than that for me. If we follow the gods of the nations, we will always stumble. And one more thing, I think about the story in Judges. Remember when Balaam wanted to curse Isolale? He knew how to get him to curse, get him under the curse. He said, let them marry them women, and those women will influence them to worship their gods. It never changes. Worshiping other gods will always make us fall. So,
Brother Nick, please just hang on a bit. Mama Margaret, you say that was Obadiah chapter 1, verse 17, or is it chapter 1 to chapter 17? I think Obadiah has just
chapter 1 to chapter 1 to chapter 17. Oh, really, chapter 18, really, yes, made a mistake.
Okay, just summarize for us what it says and what you want us to learn.
Well, Amkeni, he spoke about all the other nations being rich and all of that, and but I think as Sister Royal Daughter said too, they have their time, they have their gods, because Ted and Zambia chose us as a nation, and they have their time, I believe. So in Obadiah, when it says here that as we see now in Niger, where there's Macron, it's the prime minister of that place, very arrogant and high-handed, and it's in Obadiah, it's saying, he don't want to leave the place, and he said his ambassador in that place, and even Obadiah spoke about the ambassador there. He don't want to leave with this arrogance he has, and this stole land, and we know it well, they take away the land of the people and all. And I saw this the news where this guy saying He's a doctor, he went to school, very deprived of people of going to school at the 8th grade, they stopped them from school and they had to clean people's houses and things. It's so annoying something, it is full of my heart. And he said he don't intend to give up the land without a fight, you know? And I was like, what? How he get that land? Did he work for that? Or did he say he went to school and studied, want to be a doctor? What's about the people there? What about the children there? And this thing does make my heart sick. You know, most time I have to be praying about these things. And yeah, it is wrong. And regardless of what happened, Tata Zambi say after 400 years, he free me and he take away the curses and whatever. We have to work towards a lot of things still, but at the same time, we have promises that he promised us, right? And when I read Obadiah, he said, why all went in that land and why you did so much? I think I didn't give you permission. There's 2 brothers here fighting in Obadiah, you know, the Esau and Jacob, you know, is Edomites and the Ishmaelites. He said, you all still went in there. Even say, if take something, leave some for, as they say, when they plant the land there and they had the grapes, they leave some for gleaning or something like that. And people will go in and take up. But in Obadiah, what it's saying here, they went in and they take so many things and they have no stopping in it. How are the things of Esau search out? How are his hidden things sort up? You know, and we have and they continue and they're seeing it right now in our eyes, the thing that is going on in the land there, right? It's scripture says coming to fulfill, but with all that he didn't cast us away. He have a way to deal with these people up to now. He said he will deal with them. Upon Mount Zion there shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and house of Jacob shall possess their possession. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Tatanzambia spoken. When he speak his word, we are to hold on to what he says. We have the promises that he make to us. I mean, sometimes like we feel like right now something should happen. For the years people have been going on, they have been doing and stealing and plundering and doing all these things. We are waiting, we are praying, we are hoping for something. It's not us alone, it's the world. The world has been deceived and people have been scattered. I know, yes, he's mad and the Most High is mad with us, but we still, again, we are just a group here. How many people, how many groups that have, how many people praying and waiting? Some people, I think, as a quick fix, they prefer to stay on the dark side. But as a people, as he said again, speaking to Sister Diko once, and she said, a third, because he keeps searching, he's seeing heart, he's seeing your mind, he sees everything that in Zambia sits on his mighty throne, and he sees and he will judge these people. No matter how rich they could be, they have to throw the riches one day for the poor to take up because they cannot go nowhere with this thing. Look at that man that I'm stealing Ali Bongo, whatever his name is. Look how much money he have in a suitcase. What about the people in the land? Look at the arrogance and the greed that is making a black man. And your brothers and sisters, the people suffering, the children, the women, beaten pan and angry and hungry in the hot sun. Why is the world and the people so wicked? You know, and we keep praying and we keep praying and we keep praying. And one day, Tata Zambi going to do so much thing that we are witness to these things. You know, we are here to see these things. I don't think you will cast us away and we don't gain nothing from this. That's my contribution.
Mama Margaret, I think I need to give you a standing ovation for that. You know, that is well said, very well said. You know, we have seen that over and over, especially on the continent, where leaders since independence have been puppets of the colonizers. And the colonizers have kept certain leaders in authority for their own interests, serving the interests of the colonial masters, as well as those leaders who've been put in place, you know. And I think it's part of this awakening that we're seeing the political changes in places like Gabon and Niger and all these other places. You know, it's time for them to leave. Some of them are being told, leave. You know, the French ambassador was being told to leave in Niger, and they were saying, no, I'm not leaving. You know, now time is up. The time of the Gentiles is over. You are going to leave, you know. And they don't realize it, but it's from a spiritual perspective that this has started.